June is here, recruiting is heating up, and with that, we can guarantee that on a week in and week out basis, Alabama will be playing host to some of the nation's top prospects. And this weekend is certainly no exception, because today we need to break down the list of talented visitors Alabama will be playing host to, as well as talking about whether or not the Crimson Tide can reach in the state of Oklahoma and take some of their top prospects. We need to break it all down. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Y for yes, N for no. Are you excited for what Alabama will be able to do on the recruiting trail this summer? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification, as I do constant college football content and you don't want to miss any of it. And today we're going to do something a little bit different, because I want to see if we can get 100 subscribers from this video alone. And if we do, I'll be putting together a special video on the Alabama Crimson Tide with a special guest that I know y'all will love. But now let's jump right into it, because we have a lot to talk about, whether we're talking about the talent present this weekend or whether or not Alabama will be able to go into the state of Oklahoma and get some players they really like. There's a lot for us to break down. So let's start with the players in attendance this weekend, because there's a name I know for a fact Alabama fans are going to want to be hearing about, and that's Brandon Inniss. Not only a 5-star prospect, but the #1 wide receiver in the nation coming from the state of Florida. And remember, I talk consistently about how there's a disproportionate amount of talent in high school football right now. If we look at the top 300 players in the nation, 107 of them come from 2 states. 50 from the state of Texas and 57 from the state of Florida. So establishing a pipeline in those areas is mandatory and something that Alabama looks to continue to do, and especially Florida, that has been so kind to the Crimson Tide. So why is Brandon Inniss in particular such a big deal? Well, simple. Because look at what Alabama has been able to do with the wide receiver position, both in terms of recruiting and in terms of development. Because if we're talking about recruiting, there are not many institutions at all that can match Alabama's results in recruiting wide receivers. But if we're talking about development, well, there's simply no institution that can match what the Crimson Tide have done there. Because the Crimson Tide have sent 2 wide receivers to the first round of the NFL drafts in back-to-back drafts, and then followed it up this year with sending Jamison Williams in the first round. And if John Mechie hadn't have gotten hurt, there's a serious possibility he could have been a first-rounder as well, which would have given Alabama 6 first-round wide receivers in the span of 3 years. Just absolutely astronomical results that really can't be duplicated right now in college football. So it makes absolute sense when we see Alabama being successful in recruiting wide receivers, and especially when we look at the offensive system Alabama's running, where wide receivers are allowing them to do a whole lot. So maintaining the presence of a wide receiver is huge. Why not make it Brandon Inniss? Because this 5-star wide receiver has dominated every setting he stepped foot in. Whether we're talking about camps or his high school competition, he's made his presence known. And for Alabama, being able to finally get him on campus could prove huge, as they look to battle USC and Ohio State, who many believe are the top 2 teams for Brandon Inniss. But I have a feeling that getting him into campus, getting him on this visit, could change that. And I'm not saying it will put Alabama in the lead. I'm just saying it will put Alabama firmly in this race, or at least that's my opinion as to how this visit will go, because Alabama has done great things with the wide receiver position, and I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. But speaking of offensive weapons, we now need to turn our attention to a tight end who's not only a top 100 player in all of high school football, regardless of position, but also the #1 player in the state of Oklahoma, Hasz, a former Oklahoma Sooners commit who decommitted and then committed to Sam Pittman in the Arkansas Razorbacks. This is a player Alabama needs to be very excited they get in this weekend, because tight end has been a position Alabama has prioritized. Remember, we talked about this just a few days ago whenever I did my video of summer enrollees, and I was talking and breaking down about how Alabama has been great in the past cycle at recruiting tight ends. When you look at the tight end talent on roster, you liked what you had, but you were just questioning the depth there. That's exactly why Alabama signed the number they did, and that doesn't look to slow down. Because one thing I've talked about as well about offenses in modern college football are mismatches. And if you want instant mismatches, good running back play and good tight end play, those are the quarterback's best friends, because tight ends are the ultimate mismatch in college football right now. And even though Hasz may not have the height other tight ends have, he more than makes up for it in terms of athleticism. This is a guy who's going to be far too quick and twitchy for linebackers to cover, which I think makes him such an intriguing prospect. it'll be hard to flip him from Arkansas because Arkansas has been doing phenomenal work on the trail, and there's a lot of excitement around that program right now, and deservedly so. I must admit, I myself am one of the individuals excited about the future of the Razorbacks, but at the end of the day, it's always difficult to say no to the GOAT and the Crimson Tide, so this is going to be a battle we have to watch. But Luke Hasz is not going to be the only top 100 player that's a tight end visiting Alabama this weekend, because Riley Williams will also be in attendance, coming in at number 76 in all of high school football. This is a prospect we need to keep an eye on. A prospect who would be a great add for the Alabama Crimson Tide, coming in at 6'6", 230 pounds. This is the type of player that can be that mismatch that we always talk about with tight ends. At the red zone, an instant mismatch, someone who will have to make defenses really stress. This is a battle we're going to have to keep an eye on. Alabama having a new tight ends coach in Joe Cox. We need to see how that will pay off as Alabama looks to either add in a Luke Hasz, who they'd have to flip from an Arkansas, or get in a Riley Williams. Two prospects we need to be aware of. But what are tight ends without great quarterback play? Something Alabama has had, but something they look to continue. And even though they have their signal caller for the class of 2023, Eli Holstein, a prospect who we have to watch because he could end up in 5-star range, that's not stopping them from courting other quarterbacks. And this weekend, Dylan Lonergan is on campus. And that right there, I think, says a lot, because it's not out the realm of possibility Alabama takes 2 quarterbacks this cycle. Remember, the Crimson Tide have taken 2 quarterbacks in a cycle before, Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones. And if they can replicate that, they're going to be very happy. Because even though I love where the quarterback room is right now, and especially once Eli Holstein gets on campus, we have to also acknowledge that once Bryce leaves, even though there's going to be a lot of talent, there might not be the depth of talent that you would like, which makes it very important that Alabama identify quarterbacks they like and try and get them in. And also remember, Arch Manning still has his visit in place for the Crimson Tide, which really sends to me the signal of, if a quarterback is interested in joining Alabama, they're not going to say no, something we need to keep an eye on. Now we need to talk about the last player on this list, a player I'm very interested in because he has been surging on the recruiting scene for quite some time, and that's 4-star wide receiver out the state of Oklahoma, the number 5 player in the state of Oklahoma, Cole Adams. Cole Adams is a speedster at the wide receiver position. He can get you with his burst or he can get you with his long speed. And I think he's a prospect that's going to continue developing and really turn heads his senior season. Because of that, other institutions are really starting to take notice. And of note, here recently, the Oklahoma Sooners offered Cole Adams. So what does that mean? Well, it means that Alabama is now going to be competing with the home state school in Oklahoma, and we know how tough it can be to lift a player out of their home state, especially if they have some level of intrigue in one of the institutions located in their state. This is going to be a battle we have to watch, but a battle Alabama will love to win, which really bleeds me into the second point of this video. Can Alabama go into the state of Oklahoma and get some of these top prospects? Can they flip a Luke Hasz, get him out of Oklahoma, but also flip him from Arkansas, and can they get a Cole Adams? Well, the answer is yes, it's Alabama. Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide have proved to be the best recruiters in the business, and it's always going to be very difficult to say no to that pitch. But at the same time, we also need to understand there's a lot of hype around the Oklahoma Sooners right now with their new coaching staff. And this new coaching staff has a lot in terms of results when you look at who they got. And so it is going to be intriguing to see how the coaching staff for Oklahoma is going to be able to get involved in these prospects, how they're going to be able to establish relationships, because up to this point, they've been really great at doing that. And that's going to make these battles all the more intriguing. But can Alabama do it? The answer is absolutely yes. Will they do it is an entirely different question, and one that I'm very interested in. It's going to be tough to lift a player from a state if they're intrigued and interested in their home state school. And for Luke Hasz, even though he's not an OU commit, he's committed to Arkansas, it's going to be tough to flip him from the Razorbacks, a team that have so much excitement going into next season and who really look to be building something positive. But having said all that, can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you're thinking about these visitors, and then let me know what you're thinking about if Alabama is going to be able to be successful at lifting these players from the state of Oklahoma. That's it. See ya.